We are Frank and Daphne, a couple of not-so-young cycle tourists from Canada, and we're off on another adventure in Europe. This time we're setting out to explore the Via Claudia Augusta, a historic route through the Alps that follows an old Roman road that connects the River Danube and the Adriatic Sea. We're flying into Frankfurt, so we'll be riding a few hundred extra kilometres from the airport to get to where the Roman road begins. And for the first time, we're being joined by a few of our friends for parts of this trip. So join us as we make our way from Frankfurt in Germany to the city of Venice in Italy, following in the footsteps of the Romans. This pretty setting is in the very south of Germany, not too far at all from the Austrian border. And as you can see, we're getting very close to the mountains now. That's where the real fun will begin on this bike ride. This is a huge campground on the shore of what's really a widening of the River Lech. There's a dam and a power station not too far from here. But it's gorgeous this morning. We didn't get to see the view for long last night as it was late when we got here after our ride from Landsberg. It's getting dark at about 8:30 now. So far, Frank and I have clocked up about 550 kilometres since we started in Frankfurt. Nancy just joined us yesterday in Landsberg, and she plans to ride with us for the next 2 weeks, by which time we hope to be somewhere near Lake Garda, following the Via Claudia Augusta route. And in a couple of days' time, 2 other Canadian friends are planning to join us in Fussen and will ride part of the route with us. So today should be a shorter day for us as we're aiming to get to Fussen, and we hope to have a rest day there tomorrow. The morning's ride took us along really pleasant farmland with a few hills to keep us on our toes. And the temperature today was perfect for riding. Yay, it was fun.
This is as good a day as any to start the rebuilding of life.
We eventually climbed to a very fine hilltop viewpoint and popular resting spot featuring a much photographed replica of a Roman milestone.
The knife, and I can feel the sun on my skin, beginning to thaw from within. Today and not tomorrow, there's no time to borrow. Today is a good day to live. This morning has so clear a light as any to see the horizon and the far. Excuses were 2 for a penny, but they've all gone out the window of this car. And when I
Life is good. Life is good. So it's only 12:30 and we've only ridden 12 kilometers and we've stopped for good coffees and desserts. Here we're in the village of Rosshaupten, where we found ourselves lured into this nice bakery, having ridden a whopping 12 kilometers. From Rosshaupten, the cycling route makes its way to the shore of the Forgensee. Here, the original Roman road is buried on the bottom of this reservoir, and apparently it becomes visible whenever the water level is low. As we navigated along the busier south end of the Forgensee, we were soon on the approach to the busy town of Fussen, the gateway to the Alps and famous for its royal castles. Just coming into Fussen now. We made it to Fussen. We'd have more time for exploring Fussen tomorrow, so after a quick ride around the town centre, we headed northeast towards Brunnen Campground. Just arriving at the campground. We didn't have any prior reservations, but we had no trouble getting a couple of tent spots in this very busy campground, filled mostly with motorhomes and camper vans packed together like sardines. And at €45 for the two of us in one tent, €29 for Nancy's single spot, it was certainly one of the more expensive campgrounds of the trip. However, we are in a tourist hotspot here, and we're on the lake shore. We topped off the evening with a fine traditional meal in the adjacent campground restaurant. It was a warm night last night, and I slept with the tent fly open, and I'd even left the inner tent zipper partly open. But I won't be doing that again. At 6 o'clock this morning, I was rudely awakened by a very brazen fox who began climbing onto my chest, if you can believe it. He scared the heck out of me. He then proceeded to try to steal the small panniers containing food which I had left in the vestibule, which is undoubtedly what lured him to our tent in the first place. And it took a lot of frantic waving and shouting to finally scare him off. I just couldn't believe how aggressive he was. Today we're having a rest day in Fussen. We're going to head into town now and explore the town. We were supposed to meet our friends off the train, but their train has been rerouted. So the famous Neuschwanstein Castle is over there on the hill. It's going to look very far away in this shot, but we might get closer to it later. And I'm a little daunted by all the mountains surrounding us here, because tomorrow we have to start climbing through them. Here we are in downtown Fussen. The roots of this town really date back to Roman days and the installation of a Roman way station and fort on the Via Claudia Augusta to guard the Lech River crossing. So this is Fussen's Reichenstrasse. This is the main shopping street and pedestrian zone, and it is identical to the route of the earlier Roman road, the Via Claudia Augusta, according to my Tourist information. The town is a big tourist draw and lies not only as the gateway to the Alps, but also is the hub for a few popular tourist routes. It marks the southern terminus of the Romantische Straße from Wurzburg, which we know overlapped our route quite a bit as we rode down from Frankfurt. And it's also on the German Alpine Road, another touristic driving route, as well as, of course, being a strategic site on the Via Claudia Augusta. Up on the hill, on the site of the former Roman camp, you can see the Hohes Schloss, or castle, towering over the town. This was once the summer residence of the Prince Bishops of Augsburg. It now houses a couple of art galleries. So this is the inner courtyard of the Hohes Schloss, the residence of the Augsburg princes. And the paintings on all these facades are illusionistic. I don't know how you say that. So they look three-dimensional, but they're not. This looks three-dimensional, but it is a flat wall. Look at that. It's so cool. And apparently it was done in 1499. Next to the castle is a former Benedictine monastery and basilica. The basilica interior was pretty impressive. We had some yummy Turkish food in town for lunch, and by then our friends Sarah and Andrew had arrived by train from Switzerland and joined us. How cool is this that the five of us has managed to meet up here? We all know each other from our days of mountain biking together with our local outdoor club back home. Although all three of them now live in different parts of the country, so we don't see them as often. We left Sarah and Andrew to go and get set up in the campground, while the three of us stocked up on groceries before heading off to visit perhaps Fussen's most famous attraction of all, its fairy tale castle just a few kilometres from town. Neuschwanstein is the much visited castle of King Ludwig II of Bavaria, also known as Mad King Ludwig. You can face the throngs and go tour the castle interior, but we just wanted to view the place from outside. And we did also hike up past the castle to the popular Marienbrücke, the suspension footbridge, behind the castle for some different views. King Ludwig II grew up in another castle just down the road from here, and he used to play and hike in this gorge we're looking down on. He later had this over-the-top castle built in Romanesque style. Building started in 1869, but he only ever lived in it for 6 months up until his death in 1886. Several weeks after his passing, the still unfinished castle was opened to the public as a museum. My favourite view of all was of the Hohenschwangau Castle, which you see on the way up to the Marienbrücke. This is the castle where Ludwig II grew up and where his parents lived. The lakes and mountain backdrop here are quite stunning, although this site is not nearly as famous or visited. So off we rode back to the campground, about 6 kilometres from the bottom of the walking trail, and somehow we managed to do close to 25 kilometres between riding and hiking today. Dinner in camp this evening, and tonight I'll be sure to zip up the tent. It's Friday morning in Fussen, and we're getting all packed up. In fact, we're almost finished packing, getting ready to leave this lakeside campground, and we'll be starting to climb today towards Fern Pass, but we probably won't make it all the way to Fern Pass, or we won't try today. We'll take it slowly. Weather's a lot cooler, which is kind of good. Here's a look at the elevation profile. Travelling from left to right here, you can see the gradual incline between Donauwörth and Fussen. But after Fussen, the angles get a lot steeper. And it's about 50 kilometres from Fussen to Fern Pass, a bit more from our campground, of course. And we're kind of aiming for the basin around Lermoos, where there are a few different campgrounds. So it's 9:30 and we're on our way into Fussen. I'm going to stop there to get some propane before heading on through the mountains. And we're a group of 5 now. We've been joined by our friends Sarah and Andrew, who arrived yesterday. 2 other Canadian friends. So yeah, it's fun. Leaving Fussen, a few people had to get stocked up with propane. So now we're on our way along the side of the Lech River. Almost immediately after leaving Fussen, we crossed the border into Austria. And of course there's no border checkpoint here anymore, just the signs. We're in Austria! This is the town of Reutte. We had coffees and apple strudels here. It's a really nice place. Reutte has many fine townhouses, some with elaborate frescoes, where again you can see some of these illusionistic paintings of architectural features that look three-dimensional but actually are not. Similar to what we saw in Fussen at the Hohes Schloss. There was a famous family of artists who lived here who painted these. Yeah, so we're all doing a bit of pushing here. Just south of Reutte. We knew this was coming.
I am sweating.
I know, me too. This section of gravel just south of Reutte became rather steep, but it didn't last for long. And at the top of the rise, we found ourselves entering the Arch of Klaus Ehrenberg and entering a complex of castles and fortifications that were once used to protect the salt trading route and to collect tolls from those travelling through this narrowing of the valley. We rode under the high pedestrian suspension bridge that connects the 2 sides of the valley. This is called the Highline 179, named after the road beneath it, the B179 Fern Pass Road. And it's nothing to do with its height or length. Frank and Nancy and I decided to stop and explore the place a bit more, but Sarah and Andrew were keen to press on with their ride. So we'd catch them later at whatever campground they decided to stop at. You can take a funicular train up the hill to visit one of the castles and the access to the suspension bridge. You also have the option to hike the steep trail up through the woods, and that doesn't cost anything. So that's what we did. And we reached the old ruins of the Gothic Ehrenberg Castle. Just below these ruins is the access to the suspension bridge. We purchased our €10 tickets from the ticket dispenser and off we went. bridge is 406 metres long and 114 metres above the ground. When the bridge was built in 2014, it gained a place in the Guinness Book of Records as the longest Tibet-style suspension bridge. However, I think I've read that this record has since been surpassed. The bridge was a really fun experience and the views were fantastic. It's now 3 o'clock and we're just leaving the fortress and the suspension bridge. And here we go, getting ready to climb again, I think.
Trusting your instincts, realize that knowing looks different to each. When living authentic, do more exploring, a deeper.
We have a little downhill up ahead here that will take us into Hyterwang, if I'm saying that right, probably not, before we start more climbing.
Chatter, feel it, burn off the fire, let go.
We were on some really nice forested paths up until Hyterwang. But once reaching Hyterwang, the scenery was becoming a lot more alpine. Nearby there is a lake and a mountain with the same name. This pretty little town is known as the gateway to the Tyrolean Zugspitze arena, which we'll see more of later on. And the area around here has both great hiking and skiing. At the moment we're enjoying a bit of flat terrain before we start another climb to get up and over to the Lermoos Valley.
Section of a little bit of flat in Alps, which is like a gift.
I know.
Especially when we know what is coming, right?
Yeah, there's climbing ahead, right? To get us up to Lermoos.
Burn off the fire, let go, until there's peace to your core. Live a life you adore. Live a life you adore.
Our ride today has stuck very closely to the original route of the Via Claudia Augusta, and in this area this was also part of an important salt route. The salt route would have been at its peak in the Middle Ages, but it was a big thing even in the Roman era. In fact, in Roman times soldiers were sometimes paid in salt, such was the importance of this white gold at the time. As we cruise downhill into Lermoos, we're now entering a large basin at the foot of some great mountains, Zugspitze being one of them. This mountain's western peak is on the boundary between Germany and Austria. The basin is bordered by 3 little towns, Lermoos, Ehrenberg and Biberwier. From Ehrenberg you can take a cable car to the top of Zugspitze. Just stopped at the Spar, got stocked up with good stuff for dinner, and camping should be 4 kilometers away. Sarah and Andrew are already settled into a campground in Biberwier, and we now continue the ride from Lermoos through this very scenic basin. Moos actually means moor, and in Roman times this would have been an extremely boggy area, making travel for their wheeled wagons very difficult. They overcame this by laying down tree trunks and building a road of logs. Biberwier is close to the bottom of the Fern Pass, and it used to be a mining town. The name means beaver because until the 1800s, the industrious Norse used to live in the local mountain streams. Then they disappeared for about 200 years. And since the beginning of the 21st century, a few beavers have been spotted again in Biberwier. We have arrived at Biberwier, the little campground before the Fern Pass. There's Nancy getting all set up. It's drizzling rain, but it's not much. The mountain backdrop in this campground was a splendid setting for dinner complete with wine tonight as we watched the last golden glow on the peaks behind us. In the next episode, we'll be heading up the Fern Pass into the next beautiful valley, at the end of which we'll meet up with the Inn River. But by then we'll have dropped from a group of 5 back to 3. More beautiful scenery awaits as we cross into Italy. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon in episode 5.